Molly, welcome to Disabled and Proud. How are you today?
I'm good, although very warm.
Yeah, super sweaty. The first question that I ask every single guest is, how do you refer to your disability?
Oh, that's such a great question, and I'm probably going to give you the most long-winded answer.
Perfect. It's perfect.
So for me, it's been such a journey, and I think that has really influenced how I refer to it, because I've got multiple disabilities and they've all kind of affected me in different ways. So when I was 17, I became housebound following a virus, and I was really ill, and I was diagnosed with ME and fibromyalgia. So I've had that going on for just over 11 years now. And then over the past 2 years, I was also diagnosed with hip dysplasia and impingements in my hips, and I had hip surgery following that. And then at the beginning of this year, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So for me, that brought a whole load of questions about, does the ME and fibromyalgia still apply? Was it always Crohn's that was just undiagnosed? At the moment, we're going with, we think that I've got everything and that those diagnoses were right. But for me, I just kind of see it as an umbrella term. I've got disabilities, or I'm disabled, and that kind of just leave it at that, because there's so much going on.
And I think that that's a really key point. And this is a point I like to make quite often, is that disability and like disabled as like terms or words, it is very much an umbrella term, because there's so much variety within disability and being disabled. Because, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that you could have the same, and I hate to say diagnosis because I'm not sure that's the correct word, but it's the best one that I can think of. You can have the same diagnosis on a piece of paper, but how you relate to it, how you refer to it, how it affects you is completely individual to the individual person. It's not the same for two people. And so it's always, I think, really important to ask someone how they refer to it, because what you might refer to as your disability, someone else might not. And like I said, it's completely individually based on the person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, when you've got something that's like a chronic illness, then using the term disability becomes a bit of like this awkward dance around of, am I disabled or am I chronically ill? Do they mean the same thing? Are they different? Like, how do I fit into that community? And I think a big part of me accepting, no, I am disabled and that's fine, that's what this means, is just everyone on social media and how open people are, and just starting those conversations.
And interestingly, because I've never had this conversation around chronic illness and disability, like where do you stand on it, and like how did you come to the point where you're very accepting of using the terms disabled?
I think for me, it was more of an access thing. When I was 17 when I first was diagnosed, and then once I kind of been through that process, it was, okay, I want to go to university. Can I get additional support, because I'm going to need it? And that was under this umbrella of disabled students allowance and the disability support team. There's no chronic illness support team. And that kind of raised some questions of, okay, well, if I get disabled student support, that must mean I am disabled. But I think for a long time, even though I had that, I found it really hard. And I remember particularly, always that stands out to me, my mum, like, I remember I said, Mum, because I'm disabled. And my mum was like, oh, but you're not. And I was like, why do you think this is a bad thing? For me, using it's an identifier which allows me to get the support that I need. Like, that's only a positive thing. It doesn't change my experience or how much pain I'm in by calling myself what I am.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I had quite a similar conversation with my mum, and like, my disability is very physical, like you can't really miss it unless I'm wearing a jumper. And I remember saying to mum, like, yeah, I'm disabled, and she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, but Elaine, I am. Like, there's no two ways about this. Like, my hand is never going to grow back. I'm not going to find it down the back of the sofa. Like, it's never going to be there. So like, let's just call a spade a spade. It is what it is. Now let's move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just that thing as well, as I think when we think of disability, I mean, even when you think of the disabled like symbol, logo, whatever it is, it's someone who's a wheelchair user. And that's great. But there's so many other disabilities who might not look like that, or who may look like that some days. But I think we think of that and we go, oh, well, I don't fit into that. So does that mean that I'm not?
I think it's only 2% of the UK's disabled community actually uses a wheelchair. So like, no wonder it's such almost like, it can be quite a difficult thing to accept, because you don't look like the identifying image. And like when you think only 2% of the whole disabled community in the UK, like that's not a very big percentage at all. It's like no wonder people are like, am I disabled? Like I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, it just becomes this big identity thing. Like for me, I realized that, you know, through the conversations that I was having, like even just with my friends and family, that disabled was this like bad, scary word that if I say I'm disabled, something's gonna change. And I realized, I was like, what? It doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
It literally changes nothing, but it gets you the support that you need, gets you connected with this amazing community. And it's just like, as well, it reclaimed something in me. It reclaimed this thing of, you know, I try and look at the social model of disability and it goes, society is affecting the way I live my life, but I'm still living it. But it's nice to sometimes acknowledge that there are barriers and, you know, it's not this happy, fluffy world, but we're still doing okay.
And that's really interesting because I was going to go on. So how has your disability, how has it impacted like the career choices and the career paths that you then took after obviously being at uni?
Yeah, so when the first few years of my illness, I'll be honest, like I was not accepting of it. And I was very much in the mentality of, I'm going to push through this.
Yeah.
And I massively overexerted myself. I was living in this like massive boom and bust cycle. And part of that was, so when I went to university, which was only a year after I was diagnosed, I was studying economics, and that, you know, it's a very fast-paced world doing that. And I worked in investment banking for a year, and it was just like, I can't do this. We were, you know, even as placement students, expected to be there. I had to be in by 8 and I was expected to stay till 8. And I knew people that were doing 6 a.m. till 10 at night.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how can anyone do this, let alone someone with an energy limiting condition? Like, it's not going to work. So I really struggled with that. And then when I came out of university, I was just like, I can't go into this career that I had kind of always thought was my path. So I really looked at that. I started getting into exercise and just really giving myself time to work with my body. And when I say that, I always caveat it with, I was doing nothing else. So when I say, you know, I was starting to exercise, I was literally spending my life focusing on my body. So that half an hour of exercise a day was it. That was not, you know, because I think sometimes when you talk about that, people then think, oh, well, how can I fit exercise in? And I'm like, if you're working, if you've got kids, if you've got anything else going on, no, it's not the same. So I started training to be a PT, and then that just kind of wasn't quite the right path for me. And then I ended up sharing my story online on Instagram and kind of just fell into that for a little while. I did that for a few years, worked with some amazing brands, which was really nice. And then just before the pandemic, literally 2 days before the whole work from home, I started a job in marketing for this company that was like ethical, natural oral care products. I was like, this sounds great. I was so excited.
Up everybody's street at the minute, like ethical, moral, like maybe it's a B Corp. Like
it was a B Corp. Yeah, interesting. And then unfortunately with the pandemic, obviously we were all working from home. And then the founder of the company, who was my boss, my manager, he didn't like that I was working from home, and he kept pressuring me to go back to the workplace, even though I was classed as high risk. It wasn't safe. There'd been no risk assessment. And there was just this constant pressure every few weeks of, well, are you coming back? And I was like, no, you know, reminding him. And the government advice was to, you know, work from home where possible. And then my job was advertised. Yeah, my job was advertised, or a job that looked very similar to mine was advertised. And I spoke to my manager and was like, what does this mean? What is this? This was literally the week that I was moving into my first home. So the week that my house was completing. And he was like, oh, we'll have a conversation. And essentially he said, you come back to the workplace or you're being made redundant. Because we need a different role. There was a lot of excuses. It was a real grey area. I can talk about this now because it took 18 months, but we went through an employment tribunal process, and I won a claim of, so it's discrimination arising from disability. So it's indirect disability discrimination. So essentially the judges, like the judge and the panel, found that the reason for making me redundant, because it wasn't an official redundancy, was because I was working from home because of my disability.
I'm trying to formulate like a really like well thought out response that doesn't include swear words.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, bear in mind that we're recording this in Disability Pride Month, right? So it's July.
Mm-hmm.
And like people are always wondering, why do we need like disability pride? And like it's 2022. Yeah. And I'm assuming this is only just like what this is news. You obviously known about this for a while, but like let's say 2020 was maybe when it started, 2021. This was not long ago. This was like less than 6 months ago. And people still believe that like disability, like some people are a bit too loud about it and like they don't understand why we have to fight for what we fight for. But this is real life. Yeah. And like you went through that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm being open about it now. And you know, you say career, and I'm like, I'm going to talk about this because I think it's a really big thing, and that's impacted what I do now. Like, now I want to just work for myself. I want to work freelance because I don't want to be in that position again. Like, it scares me, the fact that you put your trust in an employer to, you know, they've got a duty of care, and to then be treated so badly. It was a really difficult time, and it really affected my confidence as well, and how I felt about myself and, you know, my disabilities. And then that was literally just as I was being diagnosed with my hip stuff. So it was literally as I was waiting for hip surgery as well. It was the worst timing. And that was, the week that we went into the second lockdown, I lost my job because I wasn't going into the office.
Like there are no words to make any of that situation better. And I'm so like, thank you so much for sharing that information, because, you know, not everyone would have done. And I'm really grateful that you have, because I think like you, I think it's a really important talking point. But what I can't in my brain understand is how, when situations like this happen, how does anybody think it's okay? Because who else is being told that they either come into work or lose their job when, like, as you said, like there were no risk assessments, there were no, like, it genuinely could be a detrimental environment for you. What other minority group is getting that? Right. Yeah. And this is not to pit minority groups against each other, not at all, because that's not what this is about at all. But like, this is why we need to be like screaming and shouting about disability, because like it happens every single day. And like you've had to go through it. And I'm so sorry that you had that experience, but also so grateful that you're sharing it with me on this, because people need to know that this still happens today. Like, this is not something that happened like 20 years ago or like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. This happened like last year?
Yeah. And this is the thing, like, because I shared it on my Instagram, ironically, because I hadn't been paid. That's a whole other story.
Stop it.
I've now been paid yesterday, only 3 months late, and a government penalty enforcement process later, and having to share it on my socials to get said payment. But
thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
But I had so many messages from people, and I would say people are in one of two camps when they messaged or commented. It was either, I've got a disability and I've been through something similar, I've had my own experience with this, or I've got a disability and this is why I'm scared to talk about it. And the thing that I really keep telling people is, if you are going through an employment tribunal process, a big part of it is, one, proving you're disabled, which is a whole load of hoops that you shouldn't have to jump through, but two, proving that your employer knew. So as much as we think we're protecting ourselves by not talking about our disabilities in that workplace because we're worried of the reaction, if there is a negative reaction, if there is stigma, if there is discrimination, you need to prove that they were aware of your disability. So hiding it is only harming yourself and only stopping yourself from that, you know, that legal protection.
And like it's, I'm just so like I am mind fucked by it. Like I am, because it's the reality of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, right? But I think it's incredible that you took to social media to then, and like, outing the company is maybe not the right turn of phrase, but like you had to make your point that actually the company that, you know, says that they're ethical and that they're a B Corp and like, you know, they're all for the people and the environment, actually when it came down to the wire, they weren't, and they weren't protecting their people.
Yeah, and this is the thing, the big thing for me is then how do we know what companies are saying on social media is true? Like on the day that I won my claim, so the day that the employment tribunal was finished, it was International Women's Day, and they put a post up saying that we sharing their commitment to making the world free from discrimination and bias. And as someone who literally won an employment tribunal against them that day, that was like a stab in the gut. It was like, oh, okay, what do you think this is? But it just brings that thing up of brands can say anything on social media. And even, you know, being a B Corp, I've now had conversations with B Corp since, because they got their accreditation after my judgment was posted publicly on the Gov website. So why are companies giving out these accreditations, not looking at employment tribunal judgments, not looking at, you know, the standards, the behavior of a company? It's blown my mind, and it's opened up so many more questions to me, and it's something that I definitely want to explore further. But yeah.
I can imagine. And like I said, like, thank you so much for sharing that, because I don't think it's like, it might not necessarily be like the easiest thing to talk about, but as you say, like if you're helping one person with that piece of information, then like you've done your job out of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, not that you have like a job to do, but you're sharing your story, which is incredible. And like, who knows who it's going to help and impact. So like I said, like, thank you for sharing that, because I think it is so important. But during that time, and like, I'm obviously completely assuming here, is that probably wasn't the easiest time. And as you said, like, it really, you know, you were getting diagnosed with things with your hips, you had other diagnoses coming up, we're going into second lockdown. I always think that during hard times, even though we might not be able to see it during the time, we can come up, or we can find a positive attribute within ourselves. And I was wondering, do you think you found your positive attribute during hardship?
Yeah, I think that a lot. And I think, you know, I'm 28 now, so I've been disabled for 11 years. Although if you look at the hip stuff, potentially all my life, as it's something, you know, I would have had since birth, just didn't realize it. And I think it is those hard times where you find that place in yourself of not giving up. And that's not to say that I haven't had moments. Like, I think, you know, everyone has those moments where you think, I can't do this another day, you know, I can't keep picking myself up. But for me, especially with the stuff with the employment tribunal, it was that thing of, if I don't speak up about this, what is going to change? Like, yes, my situation won't change. I've lost my job. I need to find something else. I need to find something that works. But what if there's someone else that comes in that is disabled? How are they going to be treated if I don't stand up? And it's just that bigger picture perspective, I think, that makes you think, okay, this isn't about me anymore. And I find within myself that when I'm thinking about other people, I can motivate myself a bit more to go through the hard things.
I like to say that it's never about the me, and it's always about the we. Because it's a much, like, you can really reframe, like, you can reframe anything through that, really, if you like look hard enough. But I always think it's so interesting, and especially sometimes as disabled people, disabled women, disabled men as well, like any disabled body, I feel like we can be very critical on ourselves, because we have society that judges us, and then ourselves, and then we like mingle it all together. So finding a positive attributes in ourselves can be quite difficult, but like, when you look at it, we actually have so many things that we can do that a lot of other people can't. So for example, Victoria Jenkins, who's the founder of Unhidden Fashion, she said that naturally people who are disabled are very good problem solvers. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, I'm a really good problem solver. And I'd never put two and two together until she said it. And that's why I always ask, because I think everyone answers this question and brings out something and like another little trait. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like, that's so true. So like, it's incredible that you're able to do that as well, that you're able to look at the bigger picture and realize that actually this mad journey that we're all on is never really about the self. It's about everyone else and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, exactly. And even just you saying that, I'm like, I'm a planner and I'm really good at planning. And it's probably because I have to plan my time so carefully. Like, I'm never late because my time is so valuable. I turn up early to everything.
Can confirm you turned up early to the podcast recording.
I was sitting here waiting as well before I logged on. I was like, oh, I can't get on too early.
I love that so much.
But I'm such a planner, and like everyone in my life, if something needs planned, it will come to me. And that's just because you get so used to having a million things to think about with a disability, whether it's medication, appointments, everything like that in your brain. And you somehow just function with this additional part. So whenever anything needs planned, I'm like, yeah, I can squeeze that in somewhere.
Let me find 5 minutes on Tuesday the 17th.
Exactly. And the amount of to-do lists that I've got, I'm just checking them off.
Oh, see that I love that type of organization. I wish I was really, really organized. I'm just not. I'm a bit like controlled chaos. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I'm gonna go with that, controlled chaos. That's what my life is like. A little bit messy, but a little bit hot. Like it's all fun.
Yeah, I'm definitely like type A. I will plan
very
everything.
organized.
Yeah, I'm getting married in 2 weeks. It's all planned.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so exciting. Are you excited? Obviously you're excited. That's a stupid question.
I'm very excited.
Yeah. Have you got like everything? You obviously, I was about to say, have you got everything planned? And then I'm like, we've literally just had a conversation about how you're planner, so you absolutely do have everything planned. See, when it comes to me, I think when the day comes that I eventually get married, if I ever get married, I'll be like 2 hours before and I'll be like, oh, like, I think I've forgotten to do this. It's probably quite like a key important part. Like, where are the rings? I don't know.
Yeah, I've already got lists of everything that needs to be brought to the venue, organized by category.
I love that so much. Maybe your next thing should be going into planning. Maybe
you
you
should be project
create a
manager.
planner. Yeah, imagine how good that would be. Like like a real like like a good planner as well, because when you find that perfect planner, you're like, oh, like I already feel more organized because I bought this.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I like the pens with like the 4 different colors on, because that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I love a good Bic 4-way biro, and you have to have both of them as well. So you have to have the one that's like the blue, black, red and green, and then you also have to have the pink, purple, light blue and light green one.
Yeah, I literally, like, that's how I did any uni revision, was using my pink pen. And also, I'm just going to put it out there, the thickness of it just really does something from my joints. I find it so much nicer on my hands.
Really?
Yeah, I love the thickness of it.
That's really interesting, because I find really skinny pens really hard to write with, and I'm like, oh, my finger joints really don't like that. Listen, people are going to learn so much from this today. Loads about employment tribunal, things about pens, things about planning. Like,
you should never know what you're going to get. By Bic. You should be like, hey, increase of sales of the 4-color pens.
Yeah, the disabled community really love them. So interestingly, after everything that you've gone through, and it is quite a lot, and like I said, like, thank you for sharing that with me, and also with your disability diagnosis, because actually, you, like you said, you were 17 when you first really got diagnosed with anything. Do you have a piece of advice for either your younger self or a younger person with similar disabilities to you?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few pieces of advice. The first thing that I give is always like the importance of rest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone needs to accept that, like, outside of the disabled community, because rest is so important and we really overlook it. I think there's this massive like hustle culture, especially through the pandemic, of people getting second jobs and alternative incomes and all of that, and that's all great, but also rest and look after yourself, because that's really important too.
Yeah.
And I think as well that helps like make anything more sustainable. And then I would also say just really tap into that community. I mean, if they're listening to this, they're already doing something right. But I found that just speaking to other people who really got it made such a difference. You can speak to people who have empathy, but they won't understand just the complexity of it, and of always having it in the back of your head that you have to think about these things. So speaking to people who have similar experiences really does make a difference.
And I would definitely champion that as well, because I have friends that I've made through this podcast that understand things that never in a million years my able-bodied friends ever understand. And it's not for them want of being like ignorant. It's not for them want to trying. It's just they won't understand because it's not their experience. It's not their reality. And actually, I've made some of the best friends that I've got through doing this, because actually there are certain things that I never have to explain, and they're like, oh yeah, I get you, like, how's it going, like, yeah, you will understand. There's so many nuances that you don't have to explain amongst your community, which is a lovely, lovely place to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think that as well. And I just think, as much as it can feel so isolating, and it really does at times,
Yeah.
having those people will help that, even if it's just, you know, being able to message someone and say, I'm having a bad day, can you send me a cute picture of a dog? Like, that's what you need.
Yeah. It's so true. So interestingly, I have I have a set of questions really that tend to quite annoy me, or I just find a bit intrusive when people ask me about my disability. And it tends to be, did a shark bite your arm off? Or alternatively, like, what happened or how did it happen? And I was wondering, do you have any sets of questions that you find like a little bit too much from other people?
Yeah, for me, the thing was, I don't so much use them now, but a few years back, I was using mobility aids a lot. So I was using a walking stick
Yeah.
quite often when I went out. And what I noticed, and I don't know if it's something about being a young woman or like appearing, quote unquote, you know, able bodied,
Yeah.
but people always assumed that it was a temporary thing, that it was an injury, which I
Uh-huh.
found really interesting because it's a walking stick, not crutches. But often I would be asked, oh, what have you hurt? What have you done to your leg? What have you, you
Yeah.
know, what is injured? And it was like, no, no, there's not an injury here. This is my body.
Yeah.
And I found that quite hard because it's just this assumption of, oh, it's temporary, so I can ask about it and we're going to have a little laugh at whatever you've done.
Yeah.
And I found that quite hard. And then now I think with my Crohn's, it's less of the questions, but it's more of this unsolicited advice of what I should and shouldn't be eating or doing and things like that. And it comes from a good place, but sometimes it's exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Almost like, have you ever tried yoga? Yoga's not going to help me out right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's just that thing as well of, as much as I'm sure out of all these things that people can suggest, there would be one that would marginally help me. But it's the cost in terms of, I mean, financial cost,
Yeah.
energy cost, time cost of trying all these things, and the mental load of it. Sometimes you don't want to hear that if you tried a little bit harder, you could be a bit better. Like, that's not helpful when you're like at your limit.
Yeah. And it's not helpful for anyone, like, it's not helpful for anyone, period, but specifically in the disabled community, like, that's the almost like the worst thing that you could tell someone. It's like, if you tried harder, you could be like an able-bodied person and you would be somewhat normal. And you're like, it's never going to happen, Sharon. Like, it won't ever happen. So like, accept it and move on.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And it's just that thing of, it just puts the onus on you
Yeah.
rather than, hey, maybe society should be a little bit easier for you. You know, maybe we should put some things in place to make the world more accessible. It's like, maybe if you tried harder.
Yeah. Yeah, as if like the social model of disability didn't exist.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I think you shared so much on this chat, and I really appreciate what you've said and how you've said it, because I think you've done everything in such an eloquent way where you've not lambasted anyone, and after going through what you did, I think you could, and I don't think anybody would blame you at all, but I think you've come out with such grace during this time. I really want to applaud you for that, because I think, given your position, I've got quite a loud mouth. I don't know if I would have been as nice as you are.
There's been a lot of emails typed up and then deleted.
I can imagine. And I've only got one last question for you, and that is, Ali, can you say that you're disabled and proud?
Oh, definitely.
Great. Oh, I love it when people answer that. I love it, because it reaffirms that whilst disability might not be the easiest thing in the world, it's something to be so proud of. And like, I don't know any disabled person that isn't like an absolute warrior in what they do.
We're all absolute badasses. Like, we're literally like the coolest bunch of people that I've ever met. Like, just the stuff that we do, like the ingenuity that we all show, and the determination and the grit. And also, we have the sickest sense of humor ever, I swear. Like, I've never met a community with like such like dark humor, but I love it. Like, it's great. We all have this just wicked sense of humor, and it's just so nice. And it's nice to be proud about it. Like, yeah, what yeah, I'm disabled. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, thank you so much for giving up your time today to come on the pod. I really, really enjoyed this chat. And like I said, I think you've navigated this with such grace. And like, I'm actually in awe because I think you've done so well with it. And like, it mustn't have been easy, but actually you're sharing your story and it's going to help so many other people. And like, that's like a beautiful thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's the big thing. And that's why I want to share it. It's not, when I shared it on my socials, it wasn't like, oh, guys, help me get the money. It was, I want everyone to know that I've been through this. So if you're going through something similar, like, it's okay, because you internalize it and you think it's a me problem. It's not a you problem. Like, it's a them problem. And you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've absolutely loved this. And I look forward to chatting to you soon.
Thank you so much.